today our regional English language office, U.S. Embassy Bangkok, very proud and very privileged to have with us today Professor Dr. Joanne or Jody Crandall. She's the director of the PhD program of the Literacy and Language and Culture at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She's also the former TESOL International President. And this past week, she's been presenting as a plenary speaker and doing workshop for professional at the all over the world, actually, but as the ELT voices in ELT organized by Thammasat University. So we're very proud to have somewhat of a target of opportunity speaker to be with us and share her expertise with us. So this first session will be, she's going to give us some knowledge and tips regarding culture in language classroom. Thank you, Dr. Crandall.
Thank you, Kunina, for a very nice introduction. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you today. We have a wonderful group of professionals from a wide range of English language contexts, and I think that will make our discussion in talking about culture a very interesting one. I thought I'd start by telling you a little bit about how I became interested in the topic of culture in the language classroom. My early education, my first degrees were in American literature, and so I was very interested in the ways in which literature reflects basic values of not only the writers, but more broadly of the culture in which those writings were penned for the first time. I then went on for a doctoral degree in sociolinguistics at Georgetown, and my minor there was in anthropology. And so I became interested in culture from a very different perspective, not from literature, but rather from the ways in which anthropologists ask about and try to understand cultural traditions and concepts. Then many years after that, I became the director of the Cultural Resource Center at the Center for Applied Linguistics. And that resource center was set up to provide support and information to people who were working with refugees who came into the United States from all over the world. First from Southeast Asia, but then also from Africa, from Eastern Europe, and in fact that center still exists at the Center for Applied Linguistics, although I then moved on to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Right before that, though, I was teaching at American University. I was teaching some English classes there and putting into my courses information and activities that were drawn from helping people to better understand American culture while they were actually in the United States. These were international students studying at American University. And I ended up providing them with a number of activities that would be fairly typical of what anthropologists would do. And before I knew it, the head of the anthropology department at American University asked me if I would be willing to teach a course on American culture. And it was sort of amusing. We routinely in the United States teach courses on cultures from all over the world, but it's not very typical to teach a course on American culture because, and you'll laugh at this, we think we're just so complex. Well, of course, to say that American culture is any more complex than Chinese culture or than Thai culture is of course absurd. I'm going to use occasionally the term American, and please excuse me and excuse all of us. Those of us who speak English from the United States, we do not have a form to describe ourselves other than American. We don't say we're United Statesian, which is of course what we should say, because the word American really applies to two continents, right? Everybody living in North America and South America are Americans. So when I use it, if I do talk about that, it will be within the context of the United States. But I first have to begin by apologizing for what's missing in our language to refer to ourselves. So that's a little background on how I became interested and continue to be interested in culture. But any of us who have taught languages, and everyone here has, finds that even if the curriculum or the textbook doesn't directly talk about culture, it certainly does come up in our classes. It's because culture is kind of a natural topic in the language classroom. It's relevant, it's meaningful as we learn ways in which people say things, or particular proverbs or sayings. We begin to wonder, what does that really mean? What are the values or the attitudes that are behind those kinds of sentences or those kinds of sayings? And so it's very unusual, I think, to have a language class in which we don't have culture as a topic. The second reason why I think this is so common is those of us who have studied other languages enough so that we're teaching those languages undoubtedly have learned a lot about other countries and other traditions or other cultures. And so our students rely on us to explain things. I had a student at American University that I called the why they do that student, who used to come into class and he always had something that had happened to him or that he had seen, and it upset him, it surprised him, it shocked him. Often he found it very horrifying, and he would say, why do they do that? And so I would say, okay, and I'll be talking about critical incident interviewing, but that's what I did with him. I said, okay, what happened? Where were you? What was going on? Who was there? What do you think happened? Why do you think that happened? And then we would talk about it and try to see if we could explain why it was that something shocked this particular student, but in fact might not be shocking to me or to other people in the class. And so part of the role then of the language classroom is to provide an opportunity for students to talk about differences in cultures and in values in a very safe place. It's often not safe to talk about these things outside of the classroom. I mean, we would put ourselves at risk if we ask somebody why they behaved in a particular way. But in a classroom, we can do that. We can do that even in an EFL or international environment. If we see something on television that seems strange, we can talk about it. And actually, even if we don't know the basis for why that took place, the conversation about it is what's valuable. And so you might have watched a television program about the United States, and nobody really understands why something took place. But in our discussion about it, we will learn a lot about each other and about the kinds of traditions or values that we have. It isn't always understanding the basis. It's sometimes just understanding each other.